So, I'm driving up the north coast. I'm moving house. It's kind of a big jump, heading into that known space, I guess you'd say. And it feels really familiar. It feels really normal, okay? And the reason why it seems really normal is because it's been years of preparation to get here, even though the decision when it was made was very spontaneous, okay? So some people would perceive it, I'm sure friends and family perceive it as a spontaneous, instant manifestation, but in truth it's been sitting there percolating and mulling over in my mind for several years since I came up here the first time for a group annual staff meeting. And I like the area so much, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to come up here, when things are going well, maybe retire, or at least semi-retire, be a good place to work if you can work remotely, and then maybe not have to work at all. It'd be a great place just to sort of hang out and live a life of leisure. And so I was listening to another speaker on Facebook yesterday, and he had a question posed to him. It's like, how do you know when you're how do you connect with the unknown, when you don't know if you've ever had that frequency before? And it's funny because it's kind of like, at first glance, it's one of those paradox questions, like, how do I connect with something that I don't know how to connect to? And so in the mind, there's automatically this barrier that you need to overcome before you even move, right? I see this happen all the time. I do it all the time until I catch myself doing it, and then I go, whoa, hang on a second. Why the fuck am I putting that barrier in my mind right in front of me before I've even moved? It's like the old saying, if you think you're going to lose before you even start, you've already lost, okay? And it's the same principle, only if you think there's an obstacle in your way before you can get there, then there already is, okay? So people usually go, oh, I want to manifest abundance, I want to manifest wealth, I want to manifest money or whatever. And so they've got this idea in their mind of what it looks like, and then they compare it to where they are in the present, and they go, well, that's not it, I'm not there yet. And the thing is that we're not worried about the present moment. We're looking at the potential of where we could shift our energy to and navigate our energy through the time-space multi-dimensional reality, where we just pop into that new reality. Now, popping into those new timelines happens instantly, right? When you're prepared for it. And when you're not prepared for it, you just can't pass through those barriers. You can't pass through the layers that hold the timelines separated from each other. Okay, it's just inherent in the program, I guess, right? I'm trying to think of another example that's a bit more tangible and everyday. Okay, like we're on a road right now, okay? There are safety barriers on the edge of the road, and it's to stop you from just veering off and, going off into the woods there and crashing your car into a tree. Doesn't mean you can't go off road, doesn't mean you can't get off this road, but you need to set up your route so you can, do it safely, and then it's fine. You just veer off the exit lane, and then you're onto a new road. And so why don't you just start off by assuming that you already know how to get to where you want to be. And what I mean by that is it's already inherent in your biological energetic makeup. Look around where you are, do your comparison if you must, right? But look at how the seeds are already there and the momentum has already started for you to end up and arrive in the new potential timeline that you're looking for, okay? And this way, you don't get caught up in having to deal with this obstacle before you even move. So, everyone knows, I'm into martial arts. I did martial arts when I was younger, and one of my favorite films growing up was Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. And the story is he goes to this island to compete in this tournament, and he goes up through the ranks, and then he has to fight the bad guy and all the rest of it. That's a pretty simple plot line, right? But the point I'm leading you towards is each time they would fight, they had this unique beginning fighting style that you don't see in many other movies, is where they need to touch hands before they start. They need to have contact before they begin. Whereas in other competitions, they're usually standing behind a line and then someone goes fight and they rush into each other. Whereas here you're already starting with the contact. And it's really interesting because it shows where people's mindsets are at before they begin. And so we see other fighters in this movie starting off this way, and you see them all dealing with the hand, getting the hand out of the way, knocking the hand aside, grabbing the hand and moving it, and before they can engage with their target. And no one really in the audience thinks anything of this. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I would do. I would move this, I would do that, I would do. How many people are you into who've done martial arts, and every time you start talking about people, yeah, what if they do this? What if they do that? And they start grabbing you and start fighting with you in a restaurant. You're like, dude, I'm enthusiastic too, but there's time and a place for that stuff. Anyway, point being is you get through this and you see Bruce Lee fighting in his bout, his first bout, and he does something which blew my mind, and I think it blew a lot of people's minds, and they're not sure what it was that blew their mind, but because the momentum of the movie carries you and you just get swept up in this ride afterwards, right? But it's a tipping point in the movie where you get to finally see what he's all about. And he starts off and they touch hands, and the referee goes, "Rah!" which means fight or start, and he just moves his hand straight through past his opponent's hand and strikes him straight in the face. And it happens like that. And everyone's taken by surprise, and the whole crowd's, whoa, whoa. And the guy who got hit in the face, his target is like, oh, what the fuck just happened? And he's like, you can see him in his mind going, okay, well, let's see if you can do that again, bitch, right? And so they line up again. And you just see Bruce Lee's like a cobra ready to strike. And then it's almost like he's tuned in so well that as soon as that guy opens his mouth and the sound leaves his mouth, it's like slow motion, that instead of waiting for fight then go, it's like it goes and he's already gone, right? And then by the time the guy's finished saying fight, when you hear that the guy's already getting hit in the face, right? And so this is the kind of thinking that I'm trying to lead you towards when manifesting. It's like, how do you minimize all that motion? How do you break that down to a streamlined motion? Okay, and now, so another example, let's leave that loop open, go into another loop. Okay, I don't know if any of you have read the book Jonathan Livingston's Seagull. Okay, but it was about this seagull called Jonathan Livingston, and he grows up in this community, and the community lives near a fishing village, and so this community of seagulls are so hopelessly dependent on the fishing trawlers that they just live around the fishing village. They don't really go very far. And Jonathan Livingston's this seagull. He just loves to fly, so he's always flying around. And let me just turn that. Yeah, that's off. He's just flying around, and all he wants to do is fly. And he's not really interested in chasing fishing trawlers around and eating the burley and all the shit that they throw off the back of the boats. It's all the scraps that they feed the birds and throw back in the water. And it seems like he's not even interested in survival and feeding his stomach to the most of the community. And they get really angry with him because he's just not conforming to the social norms. But what he wants to do is he just wants to fly. He loves flying. He just wants to fly and get up there and see what's around and explore and see if he can fly higher and faster, and he can turn faster. And so he practices flying, and he gets faster and stronger and more able, and he can go further, and eventually he can start exploring further terrain, and he ends up in this beautiful. So Jonathan Livingston ends up flying through all this resistance, by the way, all these people telling him, what are you doing? You're going to miss the burley run. How are you going to survive? How are you going to feed your belly? You think you can fly all this way around, and how are you going to fly when you can't eat, when you haven't eaten anything? And so he's getting all this resistance, and he tries to conform to, the social norm. And eventually he's like, fuck this, you guys are all stuck in your ways, and you're never going to get out of here, and you don't even know what you're talking about, because if you knew what I knew and you could fly where I flew, you wouldn't be here, you'd be somewhere else. And so he flies away, and he goes to this rainforest, and in the rainforest it's like a smorgasbord of food, right? There's bugs everywhere, there's fruit everywhere, there's all sorts of little rodents to eat. It's just a dream for a bird. Like there's food everywhere, and he spends a lot of time there and flies from there and sort of makes that his new base for a little while. But then he goes back to flying more, and he starts flying faster and faster. 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers. 1,000 kilometers an hour, learning how to dive from really high distances, and he has a few crashes, but he survives, and he gets back on the beam, and he goes again. And just when you think he can't go any faster, like he's going as fast as he possibly can, he's up there in the stratosphere, flying along on the edge of space. And he's been flying for a long, 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 long time. And he looks to the side, and he sees another seagull there. And he's like, I've never seen anyone up here before. Not that people can't be there. Not that other seagulls couldn't get there. It's just not everyone does, right? It reminds me of that scene out of Central Intelligence with The Rock, and he meets, what's his name, that other comedian, I can't remember his name, and he's like, man, look at you, you're so big and strong and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, yeah, I just got sick of getting bullied and being fat, and I just got in the gym, and I work 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for the last 20 years. Anyone can do it, right? And he's like, yeah, anyone can do it, but who the fuck does that? The Rock does that. There are lots of other weightlifters and bodybuilders that do that, but not everybody does that, right? But everyone can do that. So anyway, Jonathan Livingston, he's flying along at this edge of space, and he sees this other seagull flying next to him, and he's all luminescent. It's like he's not even physical. And they start communicating, and they communicate telepathically. It's like he hears the voice of the other seagull in his mind, and they start having this conversation, and they talk about all the trials and tribulations that it had to go through to be there, and how few people actually arrive there at this level. And he asks him the question. He says, how fast can you go? And he says, well, I've been this fast, and I've gone this high, and I've been able to bank at this speed, and these are the extent of my limits, these are the extent of my abilities. And he says, what do you think the fastest speed is? And he's like, they're talking about the speed of light and the threshold of the speed of light, and there's a lot of physics going on in this conversation. And then the other seagull, who seems to be this, enlightened being, says, being there is the fastest speed there is. And with that, they enter this portal bubble, and time and space warps around them, and next thing you know, they're standing on the rock on a mountain. And they've just teleported to a new state, place of being. And so that possibility is there for us all the time. But it takes such a radical way of thinking and being. It takes such a mastery of the so-called perceived limitations that we put in front of ourselves. And sometimes mastering that limitation is just to simply not allow it. It's just to simply bypass it and to move beyond it. Simply, just like that. That to do that takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of unlearning. It takes a lot of unwinding. It takes a lot of pulling things apart and breaking them down to the point where you see that it's an illusion. It's not really real. And if that's not really real, then maybe other things aren't really real. Maybe all of it's not really real. And if all of it's not really real, then couldn't you make anything that you want real? And so here's the thing. Most people think, I'm going to manifest wealth. I'm going to manifest money. I want more money. Give me more money. Where's the money? Show me the money. Because you think that in a three-dimensional world, that if you have money, then you can buy and create the world you want around you. And yes, of course you can, right? But that's like the lowest, most dense frequency there is, right? And that's what you're conditioned into. Get the money, create the reality from getting the money, right? And I'm here to say to you, what if you could suspend your conditioned thinking for just a moment? What if you could tell your body to shut the fuck up and just stop convulsing for a second when it doesn't get exactly what it thinks it wants? What if you could go into stillness? What if you could access the operating system? What if you could hack the matrix And what if you could tap in to the ones and zeros and change the code and recreate and re-upload, reboot the reality, reload the reality with the new programming, whereby all the results that you want, that you think you're going to get through making money, just simply show up in your reality. They just show up. Because I'll tell you this, you chase money, you chase money, you chase money, you finally get money. You finally get money. You're like, woo! I got the money! Time to create reality, yeah! And then guess what happens? You go and try to spend your money, and then all these things get in the way. You can't get your new sofa just like that, even though you've got the 10 grand for the new plush Egyptian cotton sofa, whatever it is, with the feather down, goose down cushions. And you know why? Because it takes 6 weeks to make the fucking thing. That's why. Why does it take 6 weeks? Oh, because that's how the system works in third dimensional time space. You go on the internet, you go, I got get those new tires for the sports car. Those new tires, brand new tires. No one's got those. I'll be the only one to have those new tires on my sports car. Everyone's gonna flip when they see them on my car. You can't get them here. There's restrictions importing to Australia those tires for some God forbid knows reason. You can't have them. But I've got the money. No, you can't have them. You get what I'm saying? It's all object related. It's all physical, dimensional reality related. It's mass to mass. You're pushing against pushing. Your force meets force. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about going all the way up to the energetic realm, which gives rise to all of this stuff. Everything in your physical reality, everything that's tangible, it was a thought once before. It was energy, and it collapsed down, it coagulated over time, through time, down into what you have today. So, why don't we go all the way back up Jacob's ladder, all the way back up into the ether, and forget about techniques for a minute. Forget about techniques. Learn the technology. When you learn the technology, the techniques will make sense. You know, when I'm going for an object, when I'm going for a goal, when I'm going to navigate into a new realm of reality, I look at what the technology is that I need, the understanding of the technology, the knowledge of the technology, the application of the technology, which leads to the technique. And then when I understand all that, when that all makes sense to me, I've learned the map, I understand the processes. I don't care what the technique is. I couldn't give a shit what the technique is. Okay? I'm going for that instant path, that quickest path of least resistance. It's not even least resistance, it's no resistance. There is no resistance there. Okay? That's where the thought, the idea, the energy and reality collapses instantly. And it shocks everybody when you do it. You're like, what the fuck just happened? And even when they see it and it's right in front of their face and they still can't believe it because they don't have the neurology to accept that that's possible, even when it happens to them, They go like O'Hara did in Into the Dragon. They're like, let's see if you can do that again, bitch. Come on, I'm ready this time. But you know, if you know how to do this and they don't know how to do this, it doesn't matter what they do, you will bypass it again and again and again and again. And there's even, so he does it a second time and everyone claps him. Oh! And O'Hara's like, Jesus, what the hell? It's twice now he's done this. And then you can see him going back, replaying it in his mind, going over again. How did he do that? I think he did it here. I think if I do this, if I do that, I can interact and I can maybe block it and deflect it. Maybe then I can. And then they line up a third time. But this time, he's not going through again. He goes through another way. So he uses that as the decoy. And then her hands go up and then he goes the other way and hits him again. And it's just like, man, this fight was over before it even started. It was over before it even started because Bruce Lee's character in this, he's not dealing with any obstacles. He's just like Usain Bolt in the blocks, ready to go. He's all charged up. He knows his limits. He knows where he's unlimited. He knows the track. He knows his opponents. He knows the other people he's running against. He knows. He just knows. He knows because he's trained and he's trained and he's trained and he's trained in everything. He's trained in the technology. He's trained in the techniques. He's trained in the philosophy. He's trained in the art. That's what I want for you guys. Forget about the techniques. The techniques are nothing without the understanding of the technology. Technology is hard to grasp if you don't understand the philosophy. Philosophy is easily expressed through art.